Songs, they might be good, and I could sing louder, and maybe I should, but some days my heart needs to play on a small box of wood, simple and plain, covered with strings, and nothing to gain but the hope that you'll hear me without any strain. A small box of wood. Won't you help me to say that I've had a day where I questioned myself to the brim? If my thoughts were a pool, I'd pity the fool who offered to go for a swim. Oh, well, I could try harder to cover my quirks, and I could dig deeper for things that won't work. But some days my heart needs to know that it's understood. It takes a moment unplanned, the strum of my hand with you, my friend, my small box of wood.
All right. Here we are with our really great friend, Evan Crowley. He is the lead singer for St. Loretto. He has two music projects, St. Loretto and Europa Boys. And he's been a part of many in the past, I'm sure, that I don't know. But maybe we'll find out today. We're happy to have him here. Of all the artists in Austin, I think Evan is my favorite.
That's a...
His songwriting is fantastic.
Truly.
He's a great producer. He's a great performer. And I definitely listen to his music the most of any of the artists that we get the privilege to know. So we're really excited to get to chat with him. We get to talk all the time, but this is a great way for us to be intentional with some of our questions. So thank you, Evan, for joining us.
Thanks for coming to the backyard.
Oh, absolutely. That's quite the compliment.
Hey,
I appreciate
it's the truth. So the first question I'd like to ask is, when did you first develop a passion for music?
I think you're going to love this answer of most of the people that I talk to about this, but my first musical memory was, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and I was very fortunate. My parents had this property with this kind of big backyard that had a raised section to it. And there was this old rotting fence that just sort of had a tier and another tier was just wood. And I would stand up as a toddler, when I could very first really walk or articulate anything, and I got up on that fence that was rotting, and much to my parents' dismay and fear that I would fall through the rotting fence, which again it's a raised piece of the backyard, and then there's just trees, right? So I'd get up on this rotting fence and pretend that the forest that was in front of me, wasn't much of a forest, it was maybe 5 or 6 feet of trees, but was my audience, and I would belt the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song at the top of my lungs.
It's amazing.
Into a stick. And my mom would always talk about that. And I would just sit out there for, what felt like to me hours, but probably 20 or 30 minutes, just cycling through the song over and over again. I don't even think I really knew the other sections besides the chorus. So I just think about my the back neighbors and what they must have hearing this out of tune little kid just screaming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, teenage
So
over and over again.
I can't think of anything more accurate for you though. Knowing you,
Yeah.
you and knowing you, that's so fantastic.
I don't know
Yeah.
what I expected as the best answer I could receive for that question, but that's probably
That's
it right
probably
there.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just remember getting such a thrill of like doing that and just pretending it was this packed out audience, like that I was getting to get up and sing, and I didn't know any other songs. So I think there's like a little, my first tape recorder thing of me. My mom got me to like sing into that maybe somewhere around. But I just remember that being such a like, I just loved doing that. And then as I got older, it was weird because like I kind of got really nervous performing in front of people, like when you could start to do an instrument. And so I got really into like drums, and percussion was sort of my first like instrument apart from like a recorder or xylophone that maybe you kind of learn, to play, play music on. So I think we did like a play. I don't remember what it was. Would have been in like first grade or something like that. And they needed somebody to be like the thunder sound in like a play. And so I got to play on a timpani, and I was like, oh, I love drums. I want to do that. Nice. So I kind of shifted into like doing more of that because I kind of liked being out of the spotlight and just sort of doing something that was like assisting with like what everybody, like the major production that we were trying to put on for our class and stuff like that. And so I really kind of, sort of would go back and forth, and I got to be like the Nutcracker in the Nutcracker play, and I remember loving that, when I was like really young. But it was great too because they like put me in the smallest cardboard box for the present, so when you have to come out, like my leg was like sticking out the whole time, so I couldn't keep the box closed. There's like a scene where like the Nutcracker like comes out of the box, but like before that, while they're all dancing, like the Sugar Plum Fairies are all dancing or what, I don't remember. But I was just like, God, I have to stay in this box and I can't come out. And then
Feels like a metaphor for art.
Yeah, totally. But so it was sort of like through, those things that I kind of fell in love with like performance and music. And I kind of strayed from that a lot, when I was in middle school. Once I moved to Oklahoma, there was just not much of like an infrastructure for that. And I love Oklahoma and it's come a long way and all those things. But the schools just didn't quite have like the arts programs that I kind of grew up with. So it was kind of tough, and then I kind of found my way back into music when I was in high school. But definitely a lot of like really early stuff, growing up.
Yeah.
And in a really heavily influenced art and music scene that we did, and the school that I went to when I was back in Portland was like very arts and music centric, which I feel really fortunate about.
That's really cool. I feel like that kind of segues into a follow-up question. I had kind of a similar experience growing up where like I had a lot of time developing my interest in music and stuff when I was a kid. And then when I hit high school, I had kind of a shift and a break because my school had certain outlets for definitely music, but like I grew up a big theater kid and there was like no theater outlet and stuff. But then kind of came back to my own musicianship and sense of that going into college and just growing into adulthood. Here's my follow-up question for you. At what point did you feel for the first time like I am a musician and or I am an artist? Like when do you feel like that? Did you feel like you had a definitive moment where that kind of shifted over for you?
I still don't feel like that. I'm just like a person trying to figure it out, I guess, in my head. Like, I guess for me, I just love learning and I love expressing myself, and that's about all I really know. So it's just like, I don't, I guess I've like really struggled for a long time. And I think a lot of musicians and artists do that, like trying to find themselves and like who they are and all those things. And I feel like, at least in my music endeavors, like every record, I just try to dig deeper to figure out who I am and not why I'm here necessarily, but just sort of like who I am and what does it mean to be myself. And like, I think with, there's been times in my life, like I was really fortunate when I was 18, I was like playing guitar for a band that was signed to Sony, and we did a lot of touring and all of that. And, it was like I felt so fortunate because I really did not like school and I did not want to go to college. And I knew I loved music, and so this band that we had played with a lot, you know, kind of asked me to come play for them, and we toured, and we got to do a lot of things that were kind of like a dream for me. And I remember like we played House of Blues Chicago in front of like a sold out audience, and I remember opening for somebody else, but it was still just sort of like one of those, you know, Chicago is a place I love. Smashing Pumpkins, they're from there, so this was kind of like a dream to get to play like in that city in a venue that was kind of like a big deal to me growing up. And so there's definitely times where things like that have happened, and I've just sort of been like awestruck and like really like, okay, maybe I'm on the right path. But I guess for me, it's like, I don't think I'm ever really going to reach the destination. It's like, I'm always going to be like digging deeper and like pushing forward and just trying to figure out more about myself and learn more about me and push harder to like be better at those things. And I think like, I don't really know what it means to be an artist or a musician, because I think like, you know, the person sitting at home writing their own music is just as much a musician as somebody who's like out there playing Carnegie Hall. I mean, there's different, well, there's like, you know, a much bigger answer than you're asking for. But I just think a lot of times in the world we get really caught up in like this like weird competitive thing where we try to like figure out what does success look like and what is all these things. And it's like, to me, success is just like doing something. It's like waking up and like I feel successful when I just, you know, have a goal and complete it, or like am able to like make something from nothing, you know. And it's like you know, I don't know that means anything less or more than somebody who's out there like doing it full time or part time or whatever. I think like, you know, there's been plenty of times in my life where I felt really discouraged because I wasn't getting to play certain venues or certain things. And I just think like, I don't really want to get caught up in that. And I hope that a lot of people can separate that. And it's important to take your job seriously if you're making music for money, and, you know, it's a job, but like, I don't think that makes you any more or less of an artist or a musician than somebody who's just like doing it because they're passionate about it, or like they don't have the same resources or whatever that might mean. It's like, that's what's so great about the world. It's like we can all do different things, and I don't think we have to have like we don't have to define ourselves with one thing or another thing. And I think when you free yourself of that, it makes you a lot more capable of doing a lot of things, because you don't feel like, oh, I just have to do this one thing because that's the thing I'm good at. And like, you know, I think there's so many different ways to express yourself and be creative. And I think that's what's so beautiful about life, is like finding those little pockets of time and figuring out how it makes sense for you to, you know, get to do those things. And so the longest answer possible to a question that should be very simple.
No, that's great, man.
But I just think like, you know, to me, I don't look at myself as that. I just think I'm a person trying to figure it out. And I'd much rather do that than put a label on myself and feel like I have to do what that label is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, that we feel that a lot. This podcast, for instance, like what we're doing now is not very similar to the other stuff that we do as goons, you know, and we've had multiple conversations being like, should we even do this? Is this a waste of time? Are we confusing our brand? And like, do we have to be one thing, you know? Because in a lot of people's minds, I think they just see us as 80s music, you know, neon vibes. And we don't feel like that right now, you know? And sometimes, I don't know, we had a conversation recently where we were kind of talking about, to be an artist, I feel like in some ways, if you want to be an artist, you kind of have to do the opposite of what the world expects of you as an artist. Like, to be a true artist, I feel like you kind of have to chase some of your tendencies or like feelings, you know. If you want to make this kind of music one day and a different kind of music the next day, you should probably do that.
Absolutely,
you know,
yeah.
and that's how you make beautiful art, is like what inspires you, you do. But
Being as honest to yourself as possible
Yeah.
along every step of the journey.
but if you're trying to build a career, you have to pick one thing and never do anything else, right? That's kind of that's what people say, at least.
Sure.
Whether that's true or not is different, but we relate to what you were just saying. You kind of touched. You were close to answering so many questions that we've written down, which is
Sorry.
wonderful. No, it's great.
It's wonderful.
A question I would like to ask you. I love your songwriting. The first time we ever played together, I went and listened to your music, and it was the first time that we've played with a band that I was like, okay, I'm obsessed with this music. I think this music's
thank you.
amazing. I think in a lot of ways we've kind of had some similar experiences in life. That's probably one of the reasons I
Sure.
relate to your songwriting on a personal level. But my question is, what does songwriting mean to you? Because I feel like when I listen to your songs, in some ways I feel like there's a difference in between that and some of the other songs I listen to from people. It can feel like a lot of people I know are trying to write songs that sound really good or that are catchy, and I feel like I can tell. But I feel like when I listen to your songs, it's like incredibly vulnerable and honest. So I'm just curious about like what I've always used songwriting as a tool to like cope, like a coping mechanism. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about songwriting to you, what it means to you.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you know, I guess I would look at it in two ways. It's like, what does it mean to me versus like, how do I approach it? And like, you know, what it means to me is like, it could be anything, you know, depending on what people come at it with, right? But like, for me, individually, like how I approach songwriting, I guess I feel like, you know, earlier in my life, I wanted to do music professionally. So I think I fell into the trap that like a lot of people do, where you write music that you think people are going to like, and you kind of like do that, and you find out 10 out of 10 times that you're always wrong about it. Like what do people like, you know, because everybody's got a different opinion, and that's a whole nother road we can go down. But and they're entitled to that, which is great. But I think, you know, after I kind of got out of that band that was touring and started really like getting back into writing my own music, I just kind of like felt like everybody's trying to tell you what to do, and you know, and like I just remember the last time that I felt like I really, there was like some kind of magic in music for me that I like couldn't explain, was when I was like probably 15 and a half. And I didn't really have like, I liked all kinds of music at that point. It was like, you know, I listened to like hip hop, I listened to like heavy, like super crazy, you know, I was like listening to like The Locusts and Smashing Pumpkins and Placebo, but Jay-Z, but also like this band Hieroglyph, or like hip hop group Hieroglyphics, and like just all different kinds of things. And I was just sort of like, I couldn't consume enough music because there was just so much good stuff out there.
Yeah.
And in doing that, you know, there were some bands that really stuck out to me. Like this band Everclear was kind of like the first band that I ever remember like really like being
I loved Everclear.
yeah, totally, just being like really struck by, because like I liked their music, but I'd like read their lyrics, and I just remember how like powerful and vulnerable like Art Alexakis would be in his songwriting, and like dude had like lived some life for sure. And so to me it was like I was kind of like starting to get way more into lyrics, like over music, I guess. And then music kind of started coming secondary to me. It was like I knew the sound I wanted because it kind of like just spoke to me, but then I knew I wanted the lyrics to be really good.
Yeah.
And so like you're never going to listen to any of my songs and be like, wow, musically this is a great song, because it's just not really like, not that it's not like somewhat of a priority for me to like push myself a little bit with it every time, but it's never going to be, you know, I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma, and it's like you had like Woody Guthrie who had like I think it was like 3 chords in the truth is like what his like saying was, right? So it was like, it was like that mixed with like the vulnerability of Everclear mixed with like, just sort of like me trying to chase down a sound I felt like, you know, I liked. And, so songwriting kind of just became a way for me to like process how I feel. And it's weird because I don't like, some people sit down and they're like, I'm gonna write a song about this, and I don't really do that. Like I sit down and I kind of like create a sound bed a little bit and like work some lyrics over it, and then I just like put it away, and then I come back to it later and I work on it some more, and then there's a song, and then like I come back to it when I'm trying to figure out, do I have a record, do I have an EP, do I have nothing, do I have something? And if it makes me feel a certain way, then I keep it. And then I kind of like whittle that batch down until I'm like, okay, I've got this like grouping of songs. And then, you know, right about the time that I start like showing other people, it's like that's when I first listen to it really like objectively from the outside, because up until then you're so close to it.
Right.
You're like thinking about it, you're overthinking it, you're like putting all this time and effort into it. And it's like, you know, for me, I can't make sense of things in that mess. So it takes like later on, and then it's like really weird because much like when I was, you know, 15 and a half or whatever, like when I was first really listening to music and it was like affecting me on like a truly emotional level, you're like kind of getting to a place where you're starting to like sort of understand the world for the first time and like see that's like there's a bigger world than you and your friends and your backyard or wherever you live. You know, it like hits me, and it's like that's when I like know, okay, this is like a thing, and this is like done and like right. And sometimes I don't realize, like with my new record, I think we talked about this a little bit, but it's like I didn't realize like truly what some of those songs were like really about, because some of the writing is just sort of like I'm just doing it in the moment and like getting it out. And it's like, I don't process that until like later, and I go back and listen to the song and I'm like, oh my God, like this is what that was about. And I was like going through this thing, but I have this problem where I've just kind of tried to like, you know, get through so many things in my life, and I don't necessarily like spend the time to, and I've like worked through that at therapy and stuff. I'm in therapy, but it's like you try to do those things as they happen, but sometimes like, it's like why journaling is such a, you know, amazing thing to do, because like you don't always realize like how heavy some of the stuff you're going through is, or
Until
like
you write it down.
how happy you were, and then like later on you go back to it and you're like, oh my God, look at this thing. And so for me it's that, it's like it's you know that, and I want, you know, over anything else, just like by the time I'm, you know, dying or whatever, it's like to be able to like be like, you know, oh, I made all of this music, much like journaling, that I'm really proud of, and it's like maybe it was flawed completely at the time, you know, whatever it is, but it's like honest and just very reflective of like who I am, and like I don't care if 5 people hear it, it's like that is enough for me, you know.
You walk away, you say good night in the morning, and I fell in love again. You say I won't soon forget this, I kinda hope it doesn't end this way. It's kinda hard not to feel it, even when you're gone, even when you see fit. Falling in and out of this, I'm not ever sure. What can I do to catch my fall? Walking out on a wire, I stumble, falling at your feet. Soft decided desire, you said a different something sweet. I say goodbye in the evening, then I fell in love again. Wish I never met you, but I want this all the same. It's kinda hard not to feel it, even when you're gone, even when you see it. Falling in and out of this and not feeling, even when you're gone, even when you see it. Falling in and out of this and not ever sure. What can I do? Not ever sure. What can I do to catch my fall?
Thank you so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed that, there's about 15 more minutes of it on our Patreon page. That's exclusive, it's only there. The best way that you can support us as a band is by going to our Patreon and subscribing to us there. It costs about $5 a month. There's some higher tiers, but you can get in for $5 a month. There's exclusive content there, and it's very helpful to us, honestly. We would appreciate it greatly if you would consider doing that.